On the day of the wedding, my fiancée, who had been inseparable and deeply in love with me just yesterday, suddenly, for no reason at all, said she didn't want to marry me. She even said I disgusted her, and walked out on the spot. I was completely dumbfounded, standing there like an idiot. When I tried to ask why, I realized I couldn't reach her anymore. Later, when I shut down emotionally and devoted myself entirely to my career, just as my business was taking off at full speed, she came back. She said she had been reborn. In her previous life, she had been deceived and misunderstood me. She thought I was using her. So after being reborn, she canceled the wedding with me. In this life, she said she finally learned the truth and realized she had misunderstood me. She deeply regretted it and hoped to get back together with me. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Reborn. What kind of ridiculous excuse is that? Chapter 1. Miss Lara, do you take Mr. Simon to be your lawfully wedded husband? Whether in poverty or in wealth, in sickness or in health, to love him and remain faithful to him until the end of your life. The officiant's solemn voice echoed throughout the wedding hall. I stood beside her, looking at her, a sense of happiness rising from the bottom of my heart. 3 years. I had finally waited for this day, but in the next second, I suddenly sensed something was off. Lara's eyes, just moments ago filled with shyness and affection, suddenly became confused, hollow, as if burdened with years of hardship. She frowned slightly, her gaze drifting across the guests before landing on my face, carrying a kind of unfamiliar confusion, as if she were a completely different person. Lara, what's wrong? I asked, worried. The officiant clearly noticed it too. It seems the bride is too emotional to speak. Miss Lara, the officiant prompted. Do you? I don't. Lara suddenly shouted. What? I froze in place, wondering if I had misheard. It felt like my blood had turned to ice. I must have heard wrong. It had to be an auditory illusion. How could Lara possibly? How could she? In front of everyone. But in the next second, Lara suddenly lifted her head and looked at me with pure disgust. Simon, just looking at you makes me sick. Her voice trembled. This wedding is off. Cancel it, right now. Boom. The entire hall erupted. Hundreds of gazes, shocked, sympathetic, gloating, purely there for the drama, flooded toward me all at once. Whispers spread like wildfire. Oh my God, she rejected him at the altar. That's brutal. Simon just lost all his face. This is beyond humiliating. I heard he spent a fortune on this wedding, and now this. Tisk. This is going to be interesting. I stood there, completely stunned. My whole body felt cold. Lara didn't hesitate for a second. She yanked off her veil and threw it hard onto the red carpet. The bouquet followed, crashing to the ground, petals scattering everywhere. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Instinctively, I reached out and grabbed her wrist. Lara, what happened? Tell me. Don't touch me, she snapped, violently shaking me off, looking at me like I was something filthy. You make me sick. I loved you with all my heart, and you were scheming against my family. Don't think I don't know your company's cash flow is broken and you're about to go bankrupt. Trying to drag my family down with you. Dream on. What? Scheming, bankruptcy, broken cash flow. My company, North Star Tech, was running perfectly fine. Just last month, we signed a major deal with an industry giant. Funding was secured, and the future looked incredibly bright. Scheming against her family, I would have given her everything I had without hesitation. Lara, what are you talking about? I asked, confused. When have I ever schemed against you? The company is operating just fine. Who told you? Slap. A sharp, resounding slap cut me off mid-sentence. My left cheek instantly burned with pain. A ringing sound filled my ears. The force made my head tilt to the side, and my vision briefly went black. By the time I looked up again, all I saw was her resolute figure walking away, leaving me behind, alone, like a complete and utter clown. Chapter 2. I stood on the stage, still clutching tightly in my hand the diamond ring I never even got the chance to present. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on me, some filled with pity, some with schadenfreude, but most were just waiting to watch me make a fool of myself. The officiant awkwardly held up the microphone. The groom. I looked down at the ring in my hand, and suddenly laughed. How ironic. A carefully chosen day, a symbol carrying all our love and promises. And our love died at the very moment it was supposed to be most perfect. She personally, publicly, and in the cruelest way possible, pronounced its death sentence. But why? After the chaos at the wedding, Lara disappeared as if she had vanished into thin air. No one knew where she had gone. Everyone assumed I must have done something to offend her, including her parents. That's something I wanted to know too. Why? I couldn't understand it. Just yesterday, my fiancé and I were inseparable, deeply in love, so why did she treat me like this? Why did she suddenly change her mind at the wedding? I couldn't figure it out. I desperately wanted to ask her myself. The air conditioner in the new apartment was on, but I still felt hot. No, not hot. Restless, like thousands of ants were crawling and gnawing under my skin. I yanked off my tie, only to realize my fingers were trembling uncontrollably. The whiskey bottle was already empty. How many bottles had I had today? The third? The fifth? I couldn't remember. My phone on the coffee table kept vibrating, the screen lighting up and going dark again. Missed calls, Oscar, 23. Unread message, Nicole, 1. I didn't even need to open them to know what they said. Oscar was calling about the company. Nicole was here to twist the knife on Lara's behalf. Lara asked me to tell you to stop bothering her. She feels like throwing up when she sees you. I grabbed my phone, about to smash it against the wall, but stopped at the last second. A news notification from yesterday was still on the screen. Dream of marrying into wealth shattered. Move family heiress calls off wedding publicly. Suspected cause, North Star Tech cash flow crisis. Cash flow crisis. I stared at those words, and suddenly burst out laughing. The laughter echoed through the empty apartment. I felt like I had gone insane. How ridiculous. 3 months ago, Lara Moo had been lying on this very couch, kicking her legs as she flipped through our wedding plans. Simon. She suddenly rolled over and sat up, her eyes sparkling like stars. Should we book that new starlit ceiling banquet hall? It's expensive, but I want everyone to envy me. I pinched the tip of her nose. Sure, whatever you want. She laughed and threw herself into my arms. Simon, just looking at you makes me sick. The warmth in my memory suddenly turned into the piercing scream from the stage. I shot to my feet, the alcohol and memories churning together in my stomach, rising to my throat. Staggering into the bathroom, I dropped to my knees in front of the toilet, dry heaving, only a few mouthfuls of sour liquid coming up. The person in the mirror had bloodshot eyes. Stubble had grown wildly along his jaw. His suit was wrinkled beyond recognition. That was me. This was the once confident, high-spirited Simon. Lara's skincare products were still on the sink. That rhinestone hair clip still hung on the towel rack, like it was mocking my pathetic state. My phone rang again. This time, it was an email notification. Subject, termination notice. Sender, Aurora Tech. Due to the recent negative publicity surrounding your company, we have decided to suspend our cooperation. I stared at the screen, and suddenly realized my hands had stopped shaking. A strange calm began rising from the soles of my feet. I pulled out the SIM card from my phone, snapped it in half with a soft crack, and let the 2 pieces fall between my fingers. Chapter 3. I turned and walked into the bedroom, pulling open the wardrobe. Lara's clothes were still neatly hanging inside. I dragged out the largest suitcase and started stuffing her things into it. Perfume, jewelry, pajamas, her favorite teddy bear. When I reached the photo album, my hand paused. The first page was a photo from our trip to the Maldives. She was wearing a white bikini, lying on my back, the sunlight reflecting off the sea and making our skin glow. I stared at it for a moment. Then, expressionless, I tore it in half and threw it into the trash. According to reports, North Star Tech CEO Simon has recently encountered a wedding scandal, and the company's stock has hit limit down for 3 consecutive days. The news played from the TV. Annoyed, I turned it off and picked up the suitcase, heading toward the door. Tony from property management happened to be patrolling the hallway. When he saw me dragging the suitcase out, his expression immediately turned subtle. Sir, going on a trip? Taking out the trash, I pushed the suitcase into the elevator and pressed the first floor button. As the doors slowly closed, I saw Tony secretly taking photos, probably to post in the residents group chat with a caption like, "Rich family son-in-law kicked out." Whatever. Back in the apartment, I pulled out a spare phone from the drawer and dialed the only number I still remembered. Oscar, I said calmly, make preparations. We're going to City A for inspection next week. There was silence on the other end. Are you serious? With the company in this state? That's exactly because of this state. I pulled open the curtains, letting the harsh midday sunlight pour in. Either we wait to die, or we start over somewhere else. The sunlight was blinding, stinging my eyes, but I didn't look away. Lara sat in the passenger seat of Anthony's car, still thinking about that loser. Anthony sneered. I heard he's planning to lay off all his employees. Lara froze for a moment. A trace of hesitation flickered at the corner of her lips. Suddenly, she remembered the day Simon's company opened. It had been raining just like this. He had run toward her, soaked through while holding a broken umbrella, but his eyes were unbelievably bright. Lara, I rented an office. He deserves it. Lara frowned. Without my family's resources, he's nothing, and he still thought he could scheme against me. Her phone vibrated. It was a video from Nicole. In the clip, Simon's apartment was brightly lit. A shaky figure stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. Your ex is drowning his sorrows in alcohol. This is hilarious. Anthony glanced at it and let out a mocking laugh. What a joke. Acting all pathetic like that, so spineless. So, where are we celebrating? Anywhere. Lara rolled down the window. We've got all the time in the world now. She picked up her phone and searched for related news. The headline read, North Star Tech expected to file for bankruptcy liquidation. The accompanying image was a small ID-style photo of Simon, taken back when he was at his peak, with her by his side. Seeing this, Lara spaced out slightly. Her grip on the phone tightened unconsciously. Almost instinctively, she started searching for Simon's number. "What?" Anthony asked, feeling sorry for him. "How could I?" Lara snapped back, tossing the phone into her bag. "I'm just thinking." "Thinking about what?" "Thinking about when he'll come begging me, apologizing to me and Nicole." Lara leaned back against the leather headrest and closed her eyes. After all, who else would throw him a lifeline now besides me? Let's see how he explains himself when the time comes. If he truly apologizes and shows remorse, maybe I'll forgive him, she thought silently. Anthony burst into laughter. In the conference room of North Star Tech, I sat at the head of the long table, listening expressionlessly to the finance director's report. Due to public opinion pressure, Whale Capital has temporarily withdrawn its intention for our Series B funding. The bank has also paused approval of our loan. He hesitated, his voice growing quieter. If the cash flow doesn't recover next month, some projects may face. Get to the point. I cut him off. The finance director swallowed. Our cash flow can last at most 3 months. The room fell silent instantly. Outside the glass walls, employees in the office area gathered in small groups, glancing toward the conference room. I knew what they were talking about. That pitiful guy who got dumped at the altar and made headlines was now leading them straight toward bankruptcy. Simon, my partner Oscar, tapped the table. Now's not the time to be stubborn. Should we contact the Mu family? Maybe Lara Mu. Contact them for what? I looked up at him. Beg for charity. Oscar fell silent. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Notify all department heads. Emergency meeting at 3 p.m. I turned around, my voice frighteningly calm. Meeting adjourned. Chapter 4. At the corner of the hallway, I overheard 2 interns whispering. I heard Miss Mu had already gotten involved with Anthony. That air. Even before the wedding, and the night before the ceremony, they were still. No way. Then doesn't that mean the boss was? The moment they saw me, they fell completely silent. I walked straight past them without even sparing a glance. The afternoon meeting was even worse. Those willing to come with me, see you in Cydia next Monday. I paused. Those staying will receive 3 months compensation. Everyone froze. Relocating headquarters. Oscar shot to his feet. Damn it. You said we were going for an inspection. How did this turn into relocation? And at a time like this? Simon, have you lost your mind? Director Wang slammed the table. Pulling out of the local market now is basically handing over 10 years of work to others. I ignored them and calmly turned on the projector. This is where the real battlefield for tech companies is. I pulled up a set of data. Policy support is 30% stronger than here. The talent pool is 3 times larger. And most importantly, I brought up the final slide. It showed Mu Group's business distribution over the past 3 years. No overlap. I picked up the latest issue of Financial Weekly and pushed it toward them. On the cover was the strategic partnership signing ceremony between Mu Group and the Ku family. Lara Mu stood there, linking arms with the Ku heir, smiling brightly. A powerful alliance, the perfect collaboration between traditional industry and a rising tech power. Do you still remember this? I tapped play on an audio clip from my phone. You're about to go bankrupt with a broken cash flow. Trying to drag my family down with you. Dream on. Now tell me, I said, do you think the Mu family would still work with us? The directors' faces turned ashen. Right now, the entire industry thinks we're finished. I paused. So either we stay here and wait to die, or we switch battlefields and use our strength to slap them in the face. The meeting room fell into a deathly silence, then erupted into heated arguments. I quietly waited for them to finish, then stood up. Anyone who wants to withdraw, sign the agreement now. I tossed a stack of documents onto the table. Those staying, see you in Cydia next Monday. Late at night, I was the only one left in the office. The computer screen glowed. In my inbox was the 7th headhunter email. Ku Group offers high-paying positions to North Star Tech's core technical team. I opened the attachment. The salary figures were followed by a long string of zeros. Anthony, impressive. Not only poaching openly, but even mass sending it to the entire company, and to me. My phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent an MMS. It was a photo of Lara attending a gala with Anthony. Her arm looped around his. She was wearing that red dress I had accompanied her to try on 3 times. I pressed delete, and suddenly laughed. Killing someone isn't enough, you have to destroy their spirit too. Lara, you're ruthless. Turns out, beneath the 18 layers of hell, there's still another level. When the rain began to fall outside, I dialed Ruby, the venture capital lead in Cydia. Boss, she sounded surprised. At this hour? That financing proposal you mentioned before. I looked out the window. I accept. There was silence on the other end. A wise choice, she said. But there's one condition. You personally lead the team to Cydia. I'm already preparing. After hanging up, I took one last look at the city's nightscape. 3 years ago, I stayed here for love. Now, It was time to leave for revenge. Chapter 5. At 8 in the evening. The lights in North Star Tech's headquarters were still on. I stood in the empty office area, watching the movers pack up the last batch of servers. One by one, the indicator lights on the machines went dark. Boss. The finance department handover list. Oscar handed me a tablet. As per your instructions, 80% of the non-core assets have been handled. Office lease termination penalty, 1,200,000 yuan. Equipment depreciation loss, 2,800,000 yuan. Employee severance, 13,500,000 yuan. I signed my name, and heard quiet sobbing behind me. The intern, Lily, stood in the hallway holding a cardboard box. Why are you crying? I walked over, pulled out the drooping succulent plant from her box, and said, take this with you. Put it in the new office. She froze. New office. City A Tech Park, Building B, 17th floor. I slipped my business card into her box. If you're willing to come, report next Monday. The rain in City A came fast and fierce. For 3 days straight, it hadn't stopped. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, listening to the situation report behind me. Boss. Starlight Capital suddenly backed out. They said they need to reassess the risk. Vice President Lee from the bank's credit department said things are tense lately, asked us to wait. Isaac from the tech department submitted his resignation this morning. Ku Group offered triple his salary. As their voices gradually fell silent, I turned around and walked to the head seat. Looking at the City A branch office, half the size of our former headquarters, I spoke calmly. Finished. I paused, flipping open the report in front of me. Then let me say a few things. First, cut 40% of all non-core ongoing projects. My pen drew a heavy black line across the Smart Healthcare section. Second, RD overtime will be paid double. But I want to see the beta version of System 4.0 by next Monday. The finance director suddenly looked up. Boss, if we do this, the cash flow will. Third, I cut him off, pulling a contract from the folder. Lin Capital has agreed to inject 50 million. In exchange for 15% equity. The room instantly exploded. That's unacceptable. Ruby Lin is taking advantage of us. 15% is too much, we can't. Bang. My pen slammed onto the table. Silence fell immediately. Do you want dignity, or do you want to survive? I swept a cold gaze across them. Pick one. The day after the financing meeting was approved, Ruby and I signed the final agreement in the office. After our side finished reviewing the last document, I saw Ruby's bold, sweeping signature already resting on the second party's line. I picked up the pen and signed without hesitation. My phone screen suddenly lit up. An unfamiliar local number from City A. Boss, I heard you've come to City A. This is Chairman Wang from Ku Group City A branch. Care to have a cup of tea? I stared at the message for a long time, then suddenly laughed. Ku Group, the family business of Lara's ex-boyfriend. I slowly typed my reply. Sorry, I'm busy with a funeral. Whose funeral? The other side asked. I pressed send. The funeral of the men I used to be. Chapter 6. In the early hours of the morning, I returned to the temporary apartment I was renting. The water heater in the shower was broken. The cold water hitting my back felt chilling. Suddenly, I remembered last winter, Lara had insisted on dragging me to go skiing. I had fallen miserably on the advanced slope, while she laughed so hard she almost doubled over, her nose red from the cold. That night back at the hotel, she rubbed my bruised knee while muttering, Simon, you're too stubborn. Even when you fall, you don't know how to say it hurts. The water suddenly turned scalding, burning the back of my hand red. I shut off the tap. The mirror was covered in fog. I wiped a patch clear with my hand and saw the man inside, his eyes bloodshot, but no longer defeated. How ironic. Back then, she felt sorry for me when I fell in the snow. Now, she had personally pushed me into the fire, and still thought it wasn't burning enough. The new phone on the bedside table vibrated. It was a photo from Oscar, the entire tech team working overtime, pushing forward relentlessly. These little punks say they'll fight to the end with you. I looked at it, and suddenly noticed the rain outside had stopped. The storm in City A came without warning. I stood in the temporary office, converted from a warehouse, watching rainwater seep through the ceiling. The technical director was leading the team, covering equipment with plastic sheets. Boss. Oscar rushed in, drenched from head to toe. The park management says our qualification review failed, they're cutting off power. I wiped the rain off my face and dialed Ruby. Miss Ruby, I heard your father is the vice chairman of the City A Chamber of Commerce. A soft laugh came from the other end. Simon finally learned how to ask for help. No, I paused, gritting my teeth. I'm here to deliver performance to you. I turned on speaker and read aloud the City A Government Key Project introduction list that had just been released. North Star Tech's 4.0 system was prominently listed. There was silence. Wait, Ruby said, before hanging up. 20 minutes later, the park manager arrived, bowing and scraping as he delivered a backup generator. A day later, Late at night in the temporary dormitory, I stood in front of the mirror shaving. A comeback from the brink. North Star Tech receives key government support in Cydia. The accompanying image showed our crude office. In one corner of the photo, the whiteboard was filled with dense algorithm formulas. Ruby's team had started making moves. Someone commented below the article, "Wasn't their cash flow supposedly broken? This doesn't look like a company about to collapse." The razor suddenly nicked my chin. A bead of blood surfaced. I stared at my reflection, those cold eyes, and suddenly remembered the message Nicole sent yesterday. "Simon, heard you've fallen so low you're working out of a warehouse now," Lara said without her. "You can't accomplish anything. Want me to help you?" I deleted her without hesitation. Then I sent a message to Oscar. "Set up an interview with Financial Daily tomorrow. Focus on the military applications of System 4.0. Outside, the lights of City A burned through the night. Summer nights here were oppressively hot. I took a sip of coffee, staring at the whiteboard in the meeting room filled with dense algorithm formulas. It was already past 11. Our technical team was exhausted. They had been working non-stop for 48 hours. Coffee cups piled up in the trash. It's still not enough. Chief Engineer Liam took off his glasses, rubbing his reddened eyes hard. The neural network module of System 4.0 is still 3 percentage points short in accuracy. I picked up a marker and circled a set of parameters in the corner of the whiteboard. Raise this threshold by 0.3. Run it again using a Monte Carlo algorithm. That doesn't follow conventional logic. In military applications, we don't need conventional logic. I cut him off. They need a system that can still identify targets accurately under electromagnetic interference. Liam opened his mouth, then his eyes suddenly widened. "Wait, if we add adaptive filtering?" The entire team sprang to life like they'd been shocked. The sound of keyboards instantly erupted like a storm. I turned and walked out of the meeting room, splashing cold water on my face in the restroom. The man in the mirror had dark circles under his eyes, but they were filled with something new. Hope. My phone vibrated. A message from Ruby. "Heard you're bidding for a military project. You've got guts." I shook the water off my hands and replied, "If I didn't, how would I be worthy of working with you?" When I looked up again, I realized the man in the mirror was smiling. Chapter 7. At the banquet hall of the Peninsula Hotel, I held a glass of champagne, watching Chairman Wang of Coup Group as his face shifted from red to pale. The contract in his hand trembled slightly. That was the Rail Transit Intelligent Monitoring System deal we had just secured, with 8 zeros trailing behind the amount. "Impressive tactics," he said through clenched teeth, "even managing to leverage a team of top academy scholars from the capital. You flatter me, Chairman Wang." I took a sip of champagne. "It's just that our solution can last about 10 seconds longer than traditional systems under electromagnetic pulse conditions. That, just happened, had cost my team 3 months of sleepless nights and 20 million in RD. A sudden commotion rose from the other side of the hall. The crowd parted as Ruby walked toward us, wearing a dark green cheapao with graceful poise. "Let me introduce someone." She stood naturally at my side. "This is Adriana, an AI expert who just returned from Silicon Valley." Behind her stood a young woman in a white suit, shoulder-length hair, sharp eyes. "Pleasure to meet you." Adriana shook my hand. "I've read your paper on neural network robustness." Her eyes were bright. "You're too kind, Dr. Adriana." I withdrew my hand. "I heard you turned down Google's offer." "Because I saw something more interesting." She picked up a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and glanced meaningfully at Chairman Wang in the distance. "For example, teaching certain people how to behave again." Ruby let out a soft laugh. Business Weekly ran an exclusive interview on me. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of North Star Tech's new headquarters, the skyline of City A stretching behind me. The headline was blood red, a tech titan rising from the ruins of a wedding. 3 invitations lay on my desk: an award ceremony from the city government for Entrepreneur of the Year, an appointment letter as a distinguished professor from the Capital University Institute of Artificial Intelligence, and an invitation to the 20th anniversary celebration of Mu Group. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "P. President," the voice on the other end sounded obsequious. "This is Jordan, Vice President of Aurora. Do you remember me? Back then." I hung up immediately. Outside, the sunset over City A was stunning. I pressed the intercom. "Notify the tech department. Move the prototype test of System 6.0 to tonight." "Tonight?" my assistant gasped. "But everyone has already." "Tell them." I flipped open the second phase military contract. "If they pull this off, year-end bonuses will triple." After hanging up, I noticed a new email in my inbox. Sender, Adriana. Subject, cooperate. The attachment was a cutting-edge paper on quantum encryption integrated with intelligent systems. On the title page, written in pen, "Dare to bet big again." I shook my head, suddenly feeling that everything had become interesting again. Lara stood in the walk-in closet, her right hand unconsciously brushing against the wedding dress. 3 years had passed, yet it remained as white and pristine as ever. No one knew. Lara had been reborn. In her previous life, she and Simon had been a perfect match, deeply in love. Everything began to change after Nicole developed depression. It turned out Nicole's depression started because, the day before the wedding, Simon had assaulted her, and for the sake of Lara's wedding proceeding smoothly, she chose to hide it, slowly sinking into depression. Later, Anthony uncovered that at the time of the wedding, North Star Tech was already on the verge of a cash flow collapse. Simon had deliberately schemed against the Mu family and her, trying to stabilize rumors and public opinion through the marriage alliance. Afterward, Mu Group did inject funds into North Star Tech, though they also obtained corresponding shares. From that point on, Lara's impression of Simon plummeted. Bound by Nicole's desperate plea for secrecy, she couldn't confront him directly, so she probed indirectly, asking whether North Star Tech had financial problems at the time of the wedding. Simon, completely unaware, simply laughed it off and denied everything. Lara fell into torment, caught between her best friend and the men she loved. Distracted and emotionally unstable, she got into a car accident. When she woke up, she had returned to the day of the wedding. Looking at Simon, she felt nothing but disgust. That was why she immediately called off the ceremony. Lara, Nicole's voice came from outside. I brought your favorite tiramisu. Lara quickly shut the closet door. Coming, she replied. The torn wedding photos she had destroyed were still locked in the bottom drawer, like a scar she dared not reveal. Chapter 8. Simon actually managed to take the company public. Nicole scooped a spoonful of cake. But I heard the stock price is overvalued. A lot of experts are predicting. Change the topic. Lara cut her off and took a sip of champagne. The bubbles had long faded, just like the aftertaste of that grand wedding 3 years ago. After a brief sense of victory, what remained was a long stretch of emptiness. She remembered the news shortly after the wedding. North Star Tech announces headquarters relocation. Secures $500 million in government support from City A. What had she felt back then? Why had there been a trace of heartache and loss? At that moment, the TV was playing the news when a sudden segment popped up. North Star Tech's latest intelligent system release. Simon stood on stage at the press conference, side by side with a short-haired woman. That woman, isn't she the daughter of Lynn Capital? Nicole leaned closer to the screen, a hint of unease flashing across her face. I heard she's extremely capable. Maybe Simon's rise is all thanks to, bang. Lara turned off the TV and threw the remote onto the coffee table. The screen went dark instantly. Her chest rose and fell sharply. Something was wrong. Everything was wrong. In her previous life, at this point, wasn't Simon's company already struggling? Hadn't he schemed against her and relied on the Mu family support just to barely stabilize things? Only after marriage did the company slowly recover, and it never even came close to going public. So why, after she cancelled the wedding, he had actually developed even better than in her previous life? Could it be that his cash flow had never broken in the first place? Had she misunderstood him? No. Anthony had investigated it in her previous life, and the day before the wedding, Simon had harassed Nicole. Nicole herself had told her this when she fell into depression. Lara. Nicole held her hand, concerned. You don't look well. She hesitated, then asked. Nicole, the night before my wedding, did you run into Simon? Why are you asking that? Weren't we with you the whole time? Boom. It felt like something exploded in her mind. The sealed box of memories burst open. On the 36th floor of City A's central tower, in front of the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows, I loosened my tie and looked down at the city lights below, glowing like a galaxy. Boss, today's closing data. My assistant handed me a tablet, barely hiding the excitement in his voice. Our market value just surpassed $20 billion. The numbers on the screen were still climbing. 3 years ago, North Star Tech had been labeled by the media as on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, it had become one of the most valuable AI companies in Asia. A knock sounded at the office door. Adriana leaned against the doorframe. A black dress fitted under her lab coat. She lightly shook the champagne in her hand. The lab team wants to throw a celebration party, and the main character is hiding here working. I took the glass and smiled, taking a sip. Did we sign the third phase military contract? Adriana casually took the tablet from my hand and glanced at the data. Wow, 15% higher than expected. Because we deserve it. I lightly clinked glasses with her, and because your idea to integrate quantum encryption made a major contribution. Still, it's thanks to your decisiveness in trusting it. She smiled. You know, Adriana added with a grin, pulling up a news article. The Ku family is in a pretty miserable state now because of your success. Want to take a look? I shook my head with a faint smile. Adriana raised an eyebrow. Not curious about your former rival's downfall? Waste of time. I pulled an invitation from the drawer. Next week's International AI Summit. They want us to give the opening speech. She glanced at it and made a face. More traveling. I laughed. Genius level IQ, but she hated these business events. She tilted her head back and finished her champagne. Oh right, My mom asked us to come over this weekend. She said she's making soup for your stomach. That word, my mom, made me pause for a moment. 3 months ago, at the Civil Affairs office, right after we got our marriage certificate, she had casually stuffed it into her bag and said, "From now on, my parents are your parents too." No hesitation, no careful probing, just an ordinary day. Boss, the financial figures interview starts in 10 minutes, my assistant said as he pushed the door open. Adriana stepped forward and adjusted my tie. I'll head back to the lab to monitor testing. Don't be too hard on the host. She blinked playfully. After all, they've already prepared the title, From the Shadow of a Broken Engagement to a Tech Empire. Nonsense. They changed it already. I flicked her forehead lightly. Now it's, How Quantum Computing Will Reshape the AI Landscape. Chapter 9. In the live interview studio, Simon. Many people are curious, the host asked with a smile. When Miss Mu publicly called off the wedding back then, did you ever think about giving up? Since North Star Tech was founded, we've gone through more than 200 technical bottlenecks and dozens of financial crises. I paused. Compared to that, what happened back then wasn't even a warm-up. The live stream comments section instantly exploded. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Does Lara's face hurt now? Heard Coup Group is going bankrupt. LOL. The host quickly shifted topics. About you and Dr. Adriana. Our interview is supposed to be about the commercial applications of quantum AI. Right, I interrupted with a smile. These emotional questions are a bit too gossip-oriented, don't you think? How about we get back on track? All right, the host laughed, though I think the audience prefers your comeback story. At the Mu family villa, Mr. Mu slammed a stack of reports onto the table. Another 2 projects lost. What exactly did the Ku family promise us back then? He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The entire traditional industry is transforming, and we don't even have a proper tech team. His voice suddenly stopped. They had once had a powerful ally, but Lara had driven him away with that broken engagement. Mr. Mu let out a heavy sigh. Now even Lara understood. If Simon were still here, riding on his momentum, the Mu group would never have fallen into such a predicament. Hadn't that been exactly the case in her previous life? She had always thought she was the one helping Simon. Only now did she realize, they had built each other up. With all these changes, the advantages she once had from her previous life memories had completely disappeared. Looking at her father's weary expression, she said nothing. She quietly left the study. How ironic. The wedding where she had humiliated Simon, and the carefully chosen partnership that followed, had only brought increasing disrespect from the Ku family, and more frequent sighs from her father. She took out her phone, intending to look for Simon's contact, only to realize that messages had flooded the muted group chat. Go check out the latest finance interview. Simon said North Star is entering the European market next year. That Adriana is an MIT PhD, way stronger than Lara's husband. Right. Shoo. Don't say that. Lara closed the group chat. Her fingers, almost uncontrollably, tapped into the search bar. Simon Adriana. The screen instantly filled with results. Joint speeches at tech summits. Holding hands at charity galas. A diamond ring spotted on her ring finger at the airport. The last trending topic from this morning. Hashtag North Star Tech invests $1 billion to build a quantum lab. Adriana appointed chief scientist. Hashtag. In the mirror, the woman's makeup was slightly smudged, but her expression was sharp. A trace of regret surfaced. At this point in her previous life, she should have been the dazzling heiress of the Mu family, the treasure Simon held in the palm of his hand. Not like now, watching helplessly as her family business declined day by day. Her phone buzzed again. It was a long voice message from Nicole. Lara, don't look at those news. Simon just got lucky, and used some shady methods. Oh right, I heard rumors that back then, for funding, he even accompanied executives from the Lin family. Hearing this, Lara felt irritated and turned off her phone. A terrifying thought emerged in her mind. What if everything Nicole said was a lie? What if the bankruptcy was fake, the harassment was fake, everything was? On the vanity table, the perfume Simon once gave her stood quietly. For 3 years, she had never opened it. Almost as if possessed, she pressed the nozzle. The scent of jasmine and cedar instantly filled the air. For a moment, she was transported back to that snowy night. Simon placing the perfume in her palm, his nose and ears red from the cold. It's a trial sample of a new product. You said you liked this scent. Back then, she had laughed at him. Who would run to a lab in the middle of winter just to get a sample? Now she finally understood. The Simon who would run across the entire city just because of one sentence from her, had already died 3 years ago, and she was the one who killed him. Chapter 10. Rain suddenly poured down outside. Lara slid down to the floor and finally broke into tears. At the cafe in the Four Seasons Hotel in City A, I frowned at Nicole, who had shown up uninvited. Simon, she said nervously, I actually came today to tell you, if you're here to plead for the Mu family, I raised my hand and glanced at my watch. You have 3 minutes. No. She suddenly grabbed my wrist. I've liked you since sophomore year, even earlier than Lara. I looked at her, completely confused. I immediately pulled my hand back, staring at her in disbelief. That year you had a 39-degree fever. I climbed over the dorm wall to bring you medicine, she said, her voice trembling. Lara didn't even know you're allergic to peanuts. I was the one who reminded her not to give you peanut candy. Thank you for your feelings, but don't reject me. Just give me a chance. She cut in urgently. Lara was never right for you. She slapped you at the wedding for no reason. Even I couldn't stand it. And those messages I sent you, they weren't my intention either. She forced me to send them. Nicole kept talking, tears streaming down her face. Every time I watched you two go on dates, seeing how she didn't cherish you, I wanted to kill her. For these 3 years, I wanted to come find you, but I was afraid you hadn't let go of her. I was waiting for you to forget her. Nicole, I interrupted, but I'm already married. What? She froze. Suddenly, a noise drew our attention. Lara stood by the hotel's revolving door, the folder in her hand slipping to the floor with a thud. Her widened eyes stared at the scene, Nicole leaning toward me, her face turning deathly pale. Then she turned and ran out. Nicole saw her too and suddenly let out a self-mocking laugh. So, she finally knows. That's good, that's really good. She wiped her tears. Do you think she'll remember now? That day when you said you had a surprise for her. What surprise? I frowned. Of course your proposal. She laughed, tears streaming down her face. I lied to her, told her you were going to a hotel to meet another woman, but you were actually preparing the proposal. Right. I even secretly watched the proposal video you made. I never thought, after all the scheming, someone else would end up benefiting. She muttered to herself for a long time. In the end, she regained her composure, returning to the elegant demeanor of a socialite. Before leaving, she slipped me a business card. If you ever need it, call me. I'm willing to be your last harbor, even if it's just having had you once. With that, she left in quiet desolation. Nicole fell ill. Lara stood beside the hospital bed, watching her cough weakly. Is there anything you want to tell me? Lara asked coldly. What else are you hiding from me? Lara, is it wrong for me to like him? If you didn't cherish him, who's to blame? I liked him from the first moment I saw him in college, but his eyes were only ever on you. I could only keep it buried in my heart. Then why did you slander him? Why did you keep speaking badly about him in front of me? Lara's voice trembled with anger as she pointed at her. I treated you as my friend, my best friend. Because I couldn't have him, and I didn't want you to have him either. Why should you? Nicole shouted. If you could lose him because of a lack of trust, then you didn't deserve him in the first place. At least I tried to be with him. What about you? Nicole's voice turned sharp. Why did you slap him at the wedding for no reason? Why did you call off the marriage? Chapter 11. Lara was left speechless. She couldn't exactly say it was because of what Nicole said before she died in her previous life. Then tell me, Lara asked, her voice trembling. The night before our wedding, did Simon harass you? What nonsense are you talking about? Nicole looked at her like she was an idiot. I wish he did, but would he even want to? In that instant, Lara felt her blood freeze. She suddenly remembered what the doctor had said in her previous life. The patient is emotionally unstable and shows signs of persecutory delusions. Don't believe everything she says. Back then, she hadn't even bothered to ask further. So it turned out, Nicole had lied to her in her previous life. Simon had never harassed her. Or perhaps, everything was just Nicole's own delusion, her desire twisted into something she could no longer distinguish from reality. Simon had been wronged all along. Now it seemed that Nicole's depression wasn't caused by any assault, but by loving Simon and never being able to have him. And yet, from beginning to end, Simon had never betrayed her. It was she who, for no reason, had called off the wedding. In his eyes at that moment, how incomprehensible must she have seemed? I was wrong. What have I done? Lara stood on the hospital rooftop, the cold wind whipping her clothes. Memories surged like a tide. Simon staying up all night to help revise her graduation project. Him running all over the city to buy her medicine when she had a fever, sweat dripping from his forehead. The night before the wedding, when he mysteriously said he had prepared a surprise, his eyes full of light, and what had she given him in return? A public rejection, a slap, the cruelest humiliation. Her phone vibrated again. It was an urgent document from her father. Feasibility analysis on Mu Group's debt restructuring. She opened the attachment, her vision going dark. Only potential strategic investor, North Star Tech, Holding, Company, Limited. Key person, Simon, CEO. Related party, Adriana. Chief scientist, spouse. At the bottom, the financial forecast chart was terrifying. A red arrow pointing straight toward bankruptcy liquidation. In the distance, a massive screen in the business district suddenly switched. North Star Tech's promotional video lit up half the night sky. Simon and Adriana stood side by side in silhouette as the words rolled across. Changing the future starts now. Lara staggered, gripping the railing, her chest tightening painfully. She collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down. With her own hands, she had pushed the men who loved her deeply into another woman's arms, and dragged her family business into an irreversible abyss. Lara sat slumped at the edge of the rooftop, staring at the dazzling brilliance of North Star Tech's billboard. She couldn't help but remember the last look Simon gave her at the wedding. There was no hatred, only complete confusion, and a heart that had gone utterly cold. On a rainy night, Lara Mu stood outside the revolving door, soaked through. Her pale face was indistinguishable between rainwater and tears. In her hand, she clutched a worn, yellowed notebook. Soon after, the reception desk transferred a call to my private line. Boss, the head of security hesitated. Miss Mu has been standing downstairs in the rain for half an hour. She says if you don't see her, she'll. I frowned. Let her come up. When the glass door of the conference room opened, I was reviewing documents. Hearing the sound, I didn't even look up. Sit. Simon, Lara's voice trembled. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Chapter 12. I froze for a moment, then stopped and looked at her. You were wrong. I took a deep breath. I've been waiting for you to say that for a long time. So tell me, what exactly were you wrong about? I should have trusted you. Lara broke down in tears. I shouldn't have hurt you like that. I want to know the reason. I shouted. Why? That question had haunted my mind for 3 years. For these 3 years, I've asked myself countless times, why? I let out a self-mocking laugh. Did I neglect your feelings? Was I too busy with the company and ignored you? Or even, I paused. Were you being threatened by someone? I couldn't figure it out. What kind of reason could make you do something like that? I'm sorry, I wronged you. I was deceived by them too. Lara cried uncontrollably. I regret it now, more than just in this life. I didn't respond. I simply stood there, quietly waiting for her to finish. Do you believe in rebirth? She asked cautiously. Rebirth? Hearing that, I almost laughed out of anger, letting out a cold scoff. It's true, she hurriedly said. In my previous life, before Nicole died from depression, she told me you had harassed her. That's why I misunderstood you. If you don't believe me, look at this. She handed me a notebook. I flipped it open. Inside was Lara's familiar handwriting, detailing how in her previous life my company went bankrupt. What Nicole said before she died, even accurately predicting several industry changes over the past 3 years. So, I tossed the notebook back to her. That's your reason for calling me disgusting at the wedding. She crawled forward on her knees, clutching my pant leg. I was blinded by hatred at the time. In this life, I could have changed everything, but, interesting, I smiled faintly. So in your so-called previous life, we were deeply in love. Of course, we. Then why, after being reborn, I suddenly interrupted. Did you sentence me without even asking a single question? Lara's lips began to tremble. Let's assume you really were reborn. I crouched down to meet her eyes. Then why didn't you ever ask me? I lifted her chin with my fingers. Why didn't you investigate? Why didn't you give me even the most basic trust? Why didn't you give me a chance to explain? I demanded, my voice filled with anger. In your so-called previous life, I leaned close to her ear and whispered. Did we ever truly love each other? Or did you simply never trust me at all? In the end, whether in this life or the last, you never truly trusted me. Lara staggered, gripping the edge of the table. All the carefully prepared words of apology failed her. She suddenly realized, more absurd than being reborn, was that, even with the memories of 2 lifetimes, she had lost him even earlier than before. Escort her out, I called. As the security guards dragged her away, Lara suddenly cried out in despair. Why did you let me be reborn? If you gave me a second chance, why does it still end like this? Lara came again, apologizing, begging for reconciliation. Late love is cheaper than dirt. Where was it before? These days, I have nightmares every night. Her voice trembled. I dream about all the little ways you treated me well, and about what I did at the wedding. Simon. I regret it. The only person I've ever loved is you. Back then, I was completely out of my mind. I lifted my head, a trace of helplessness in my expression. I understand. I closed the folder. Thank you for your honesty. Lara suddenly grabbed the edge of the desk. Then, do we still have a chance? She asked desperately. I'm willing to do anything to make it up to you. Chapter 13. My phone suddenly rang. It was Adriana. I picked it up. Just finished talking. All right. I'll have the driver pick you up. My voice softened unconsciously. See you downstairs in half an hour. Is it her? Lara gave a bitter smile as soon as I hung up. That Adriana. Miss Mu. I cut her off calmly. We've already broken up. And that was your choice. Why? Why did it turn out like this? I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I've heard your explanation. So what now? Lara's sobbing suddenly stopped. Back then, you chose not to believe me. I paused. In front of everyone, you used the cruelest words and the most resolute stance to crush our relationship, and my dignity, into the dirt. Did you ever think of giving me even 1 minute to explain? I stood up. Now that the truth is out, you feel wronged. You feel pain. I turned around, looking down at her. What about my pain? Who's going to pay for that wedding, the one I almost didn't survive? Lara's chest heaved violently. Back then, when you ran away wearing the wedding dress I personally chose for you, I let out a soft laugh. I didn't make a scene. Lara froze. And now, I pressed the call button. Why are you crying? Are you crying because you finally realized how terribly wrong you were, only to find that no one is waiting for you anymore? Or are you crying because what you lost was never love, just the straw you thought could save the Mu family? Or maybe, I tilted my head slightly. You're crying because you were blind. The assistant pushed the door open. He handed over a box of tissues, but I waved it away. Wipe down the reception area. Dr. Adriana is allergic to tears. Lara Mu was taken away. Her hysterical screams echoed faintly from the elevator. 3 months later, Mu Group went bankrupt. Lara sat in a cramped rental apartment, staring at the TV as her family villa was sealed off. A reporter was interviewing a North Star Tech employee. I heard your company has acquired Mu Group's core patents. Standard business practice, the employee replied with a smile. Dr. Adriana believes those technologies still have room for improvement. Outside, thunder roared as heavy rain battered the windows. Lara mechanically opened her phone gallery and scrolled to a photo from 3 years ago. Simon proposing to her. The men knelt on the beach, love in his eyes almost spilling out of the screen. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Clutching her phone, she broke down in tears. Meanwhile, in an overwater villa in the Maldives, Adriana leaned against me. I've reviewed the lab data. She looked up at me. Guess what? That core algorithm from Mu Group actually has some merit. So, I asked, my hand resting lightly on her shoulder. So I improved it. Adriana blinked mischievously. Perfect timing for phase 4 of the next project. I chuckled softly and pulled her into my arms. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the endless blue sea and sky stretched into the horizon. The white sand beach had long been smoothed over by the tides, just like certain pasts that had already disappeared without a trace.